All right, welcome to interview one of Instinct Sports Podcast. Today we have Dr. Matthew Cooper. Matthew, could you please introduce yourself and your occupation?
Sure. My name is Dr. Matthew Cooper. I'm a sports chiropractor. I've been practicing for roughly 20 years and specialize in taking care of athletes from sports performance, rehab. We do physiotherapy, chiropractic, acupuncture, nutrition. We work with supplementation. We also do regenerative medicine. So we do stem cells and PRP and ozone therapy and things like this to get the most out of our patients and our athletes.
Okay. So in your many years of working, what has been the best, like the biggest thing you learned that helped you improve in your way, in your ways of helping athletes recover?
Um, I really believe it's not just one thing, right? I really believe in chemical, physical, and even emotional. And so to really get the best out of an athlete, they have to live the lifestyle. So a part of it I can help them with, but ultimately they have to. If they want longevity and they want to decrease injuries, when they're young and they come into the league, they're eating crap and they're partying and if they don't stop and really start to take care of themselves, they fizzle out. And so, we try to help them stay in shape, exercising properly, using our hands to help with their injuries, but also the chemical component is huge: nutrition, supplementation, sleep, things like that. So, I don't believe there's one answer. I believe that it's a combination of all these things. There are a lot of good athletes out there, a lot of big, fast, women and men out there. And what's going to differentiate you from being the best or staying in the league for X amount of years? I think that you need everything. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but that's kind of what we try to help with our patients.
Thank you.
Yeah. That's a very good summary. So now I just want to ask you about your origins of how you became a doctor, what influenced you to become it. So I want to ask you, what first really triggered you to think of this is what I want to do with my life and this is what I see as my dream?
Well, that's a good question. And for me, I was always interested in medicine and wanted to help people. And sorry. Um, and and I had family members who are doctors and pharmacists and things like this. And so, I was always interested in it. And my mother had gotten into a car accident when I was a senior in high school, and she was in a lot of pain. She went to see orthopedic surgeons and other medical doctors, and no one could help her except for this chiropractor that she went to. And I used to drive her there, and I used to go, and I became friendly with the chiropractor. I started going, and I just thought, wow, this is different and interesting. And he was working with a lot of athletes up at the time, and I just thought that this is something I could see myself doing. So while I was in school and I was a business major, I would come home from college on breaks and I would spend time in the office and seeing if there's something I was interested in doing. And it just happened to really click with me and something that I thought I could see myself doing. So that's kind of how I got into it and how I started.
And when you first started working and everything, do you remember who your first patient, sorry, who your first patient was, or like the first thing you treated?
I remember one thing vividly, and I don't know if I can say his name, but he was Secretary of Defense, and it was my first day and the first morning on the job, and I walked into the room and I didn't know who was going to be there, but it happened to be a very well-known, famous guy at the time who had spinal stenosis, and I knew what I was doing and I was well equipped to handle the situation. It's just, when you walked in and someone's is sitting there that you've seen, on TV for years and years and years and is very famous,
A little bit of a shock.
I had to kind of compose myself and then just do what I did and got him better. So I do remember that pretty vividly.
Just a little bit of shock, but then just went with it.
Yeah, listen, what I learned early on is a spine's a spine if I'm treating someone's spine. A shoulder's a shoulder. It doesn't matter if the person's famous or they're not famous. They have a herniated disc, they have spinal stenosis, they have a rotator cuff problem. You have to fix it. It doesn't matter who the person is. Their spine is no different than my spine. So I learned that early on, and so that's that.
So out
I
of like,
remember my first, professional hockey player, my first professional football player. There's a football player, Zach Crockett, who was, at Florida State, and he played for the Jaguars and the Raiders. And early on in his career, he had an injury for a year, so he couldn't get better. And I worked on him a couple of times. His pain went away, and I was a huge football fan, and and then he's very influential in South Florida. He's from this area. There's a lot for the community. And then his brother played in the league, and then he started bringing a lot of his, friends and people that played in the league over to me. And then that's kind of how it all started for me in the NFL, and met his agents and other agents through the other guys they brought in. And then it just kind of steamrolled from there. So I
so
remember working on Zach's foot problem, and got pretty lucky, helping him. And his brother Henry had a knee issue, and I think that kind of started it all for me.
yeah. So out of like NFL guys, who do you think's been like your best experience helping or treating an NFL athlete?
I mean, unfortunately for the players, unfortunately for me, there's been a lot of them, right? There's
Yeah.
I don't even know 1,000 players that we've worked on. So,
Who's been your favorite?
well, favorite how? I mean, how
Like just as
there
a
are a lot
person
of
to work with and treat with.
there's a player, John Beeson, who was great to work with. Unfortunately, played every down for 4 years, won Ironman awards, and won 2 or 3 in the league in tackles for his first 4 years in the league. And he went really hard, and he started to break down. So he was a great guy, and someone that we tried to help a lot with his difficult injuries. I mean, there are a lot of guys. I worked on Gronk when for years up until recently, and he came out of college and he had back surgery, well documented, and he wasn't
Yeah.
supposed to make his pro day. He missed the combine, and so there was no way he was going to make his pro day, and we rehabbed him, and he made his pro day, and he killed it in his pro day.
Did you think he was gonna
And
become what he did?
what's that?
Did you think he was gonna become what he ended up becoming?
No, no. I mean, the honest truth was his two brothers were already in the league. Or his one brother's already in the league. His other brother's going to get drafted to go into the league, and he obviously had the genes, and he worked hard. Um, but my first honest opinion of him was that he had 2 left feet. He was, kind of not the fastest and not the quickest, and he had great hands. I didn't know what kind of blocker he was. He only played 1 year in college, so you
Yeah.
really didn't know.
Arizona.
So no, I didn't. That year we had Jimmy Graham also, and who was a real athlete, a basketball player. We had some other, Greg Olson. We had a bunch of other tight ends who were just, in my opinion, better athletes. So I thought Gronk would be good, but I obviously never thought he would turn out to who he was. Antonio Brown, another guy, I worked with him in college. Not the fastest, not the biggest, first guy to come for practice, last guy to leave for practice, practiced again, all day long, and really dedicated his time to his craft, still does, and earned, his success. It wasn't really given to him like some of the other guys who were just natural ability. So, I mean, there are a lot of them, but
Yeah.
JPP had back surgery. I was a big Giant fan. He was playing with the Giants at the time, and he worked hard and got back onto the field and had an amazing few years, still
Yeah.
doing it.
Right now, still
So
wrecking the league.
yeah, so there's a lot of guys out there.
So I wanted to ask you about earlier. You were talking about how you worked with a lot of guys that were connected. So obviously your job has opened a lot of doors for connections to other athletes and to get to know other like high profile people. So I wanted to ask you, out of all those doors that's been opened or the connections you made, what's the one that surprised you the most? Like what caught you off guard? Like something like a connection through one of your clients.
I mean, from a professional level or a personal level.
It could be either.
I mean, listen, I have patients that have won, heavyweight championship boxing titles of the world in multiple weight classes, boxing champions. I was at the Olympics in 2016 in Rio, and patients who won gold medals, and you're there at the ceremony, and listen, these athletes work really hard. I take zero credit for what I do. They win championships, they win medals. I'm just there 0.5% to try to help them accomplish their lifelong goals. They dedicate all their time to these goals, and I'm just another little small piece of the puzzle. But when you're in Rio and you have a patient that you've worked with for a lot of years, getting a gold medal, that's a big deal. Um, and multiple patients. So, those things on a personal level, like I've had, athletes, you know, send stuff to my kids for birthdays, come to my kids' birthday parties, do videos for the bat mitzvah, come to the bat mitzvah. So there's been some personal things, along the way as well. But I would say most of the success that I've had, that I've enjoyed, is really more from a professional standpoint, and just, sometimes it's psychological when they worked with you in the past and they had good results. Then sometimes there's a psychological component to it where they just want you again, because whether I help them or not, they just feel it's helped them. So I think that's really the most I've gotten out of it. It's cool being in a locker room after a game, or uh, you know, during practices or camps, and so as a sports fan, that's been it's been a really cool experience.
So, out of your 20 years of working, what do you think's been like the worst or most gruesome injury you ever had to treat?
Well, we've had some guys that have had really nasty knee injuries where they've blown out their whole knee, their ACL, their MCL, their meniscus, and the recovery process is long and brutal. We've had guys who've fractured their fib and tib, and they've come through the skin. The bones come through the skin, and those are really long recoveries as well. I think the leg injuries are probably the worst, because they need their legs, right, to perform. They need the whole body, but you can't run fast if your legs not working properly. So I think those are probably the worst athletic injuries. Um, Obviously, we've treated a lot of patients who've had neck surgeries and lower back surgeries, and so we've rehabbed a lot of those as well, which are difficult. But I think the leg injuries for the athletes are probably the worst.
And a lot of athletes, you see them get an injury and almost take almost a full year off, but then come back the next year a lot stronger. Is that because like they have more time to stay in the weight room and everything, and just like they work a lot through their injury? Like for example, Adrian Peterson, he had his ACL and MCL teared, and then came back stronger than ever.
Yeah, listen, I think that there are certain injuries, and there are certain guys, and you know it's a grind. And these guys, what they do is not easy, and they have to dedicate a lot of their time to get better. And some of the guys do, and some of the guys don't. Right, and so some guys disappear, and some guys keep going. So I do think that these guys think that they're invincible for the most part,
Hmm.
and then they're 26, 27. Maybe they've worked out hard. Maybe they thought they worked out hard. Maybe they thought they ate well. And then all of a sudden at 27, 28, they're like, yeah, I'm starting to fall apart. I need to take better care of myself. And so sometimes it takes a really nasty injury for a really motivated guy to say, I'm going to work really hard. I'm going to get back and be better than ever. And for that, you need to work harder than you've ever worked. And some guys, dedicate and decide this is what I'm going to do. And some guys just keep doing what they're doing. And so I think that if it's in you and you're motivated to work harder than you've ever worked, then yeah, you can be just as good as you were prior to the injury, depending on the injury. Or as you get older and you start to develop experience, you figure out how to compensate and change your game a little bit based upon what you can and can't do anymore. So I think those are important factors.
Yeah, for sure. And speaking about taking care of yourself, as you are a professional, are there any like tips, health things that you can tell our viewers to, just take care of their casual lives? Not something so like specialized for athletes, but just eating healthy, doing some sort of activity. What do you have to tell them to, keep their bodies in order?
Yeah, listen, I think it's no secret, right? If you want to if you want to perform at any level, if you want to have less pain, if you want to, be better for golf or tennis or running, whatever it is that you do, the better the nutrients you put into your body, the better you're going to perform, right? I mean, it's been proven and shown for years, especially if as you get older, right? If you're a weekend warrior and you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s, it's all important. So we also are firm believers in supplementation. We use enzymes to help deliver nutrients past sometimes incomplete digestive systems, and supplements sometimes are really hard to absorb without enzymes. So we combine different enzymes to help break down foods, to help you absorb them better with certain supplements for performance, for recovery, for sleep, which I think is all important as well. Um, and then, depending on your age and your goals, knowing what the risk versus the benefit ratio is for doing a certain type of activity or exercise. Maybe there are some exercises at the gym, if you're 50 years old, that's just not worth doing anymore. The benefits aren't huge and the risk is huge. So I think that you have to figure out what your goals are and who you are, and make the right exercise program for what it is that you want to achieve.
Thank you. So out of all the things you got, so out of all the sorry, players you've treated, do you think it's important to build like a bond with the players to help them recover? Does that ever help you, or do you like doing that?
Yeah, listen, I think if you, whatever field you're in when you go to work, if you're in an environment where everyone gets along, then it's a more pleasurable place to be, right? So I think that if you have some sort of relationship and trust, in my field, I really believe trust is key. They need to trust you. They need to know that they need to know that you know you know what you're doing, and they have confidence and trust that you're going to help them get better. Because again, there's a psychological component to this as well. Do I think you need best to be best friends with them? No, that's not important at all. And but I do think there needs to be some sort of bilateral trust and relationship there, for the players, for all patients, no matter who they are,
Yeah.
at any level.
Definitely. So, just one more question about your occupation and being a doctor, and then we're going to move into like, your hobbies and such. Could we ask you, what's the most intriguing story that you've had with a patient? And by intriguing, I mean, have you ever gone, like you said, you went to the Olympics. If that was like the most intriguing thing, like what happened there? How was your experience there? What did you do there?
Or just like
So
the
like,
most fun thing you've gotten to do because of resulting like of you being a doctor, like going to the Super Bowl. I'm pretty sure you've been in like the sidelines for the Super Bowl as a doctor, right? Or
No, not as a
or
sideline
not on
doctor
the
for the
sideline.
Super
No,
Bowl. No, but
sorry, got
yeah, I
confused.
mean, listen, I think that, the Olympics is pretty tough to beat. Um, you know, Stayed in the Olympic Village, which was
Yeah.
unbelievable. You go downstairs to the cafeteria. The cafeteria is the size of 5 football fields,
Hmm.
and all the athletes from all over the world are there. And it's a cafeteria style where you have your tray and you go up, and there's like a sign like Japan, China, countries in Africa, United States, Italy, France, and you can go up to the country and you can eat their food, right? So it was really really cool experience. And then everyone but the basketball players are there. They stayed on a boat in Brazil, in Rio, but tennis players and everyone's there.
Who was
And
your favorite
so I'm
person
with
to
the
meet?
American. What's that?
Who was your favorite person to meet when you were there?
I guess Usain Bolt, I guess would probably be, on the top of the list. I'm a, a huge track and field fan. And so, didn't get to work with him, unfortunately, but, knew his agent. And, so that was pretty cool.
And
Um,
two little questions. One, did you play any sports as a kid and things like that? And like, and if you did you get to did you like idolize any players and then end up getting to meet them?
yeah, growing up, I was in New York, and I was a huge New York Giants fan. And through my relationships, connections over the years, my favorite player was Lawrence Taylor, and I got to meet Lawrence Taylor. I still was a huge Giant fan, and Plexico Burris and Ahmad Bradshaw and Andre Brown and JBP, and these guys won Super Bowls, and I was able to hear their stories. One day I remember we're in the treatment room, and there was a bunch of guys from the Patriots there, and then there was a bunch of guys from the Giants there when the year when the Giants beat them, when the Patriots were undefeated. And I got to hear these stories from, like 15, maybe 14 guys at the time who played on those two teams. And they were telling like what they were saying on the sideline and what their thought process was, how this whole thing's played out. And that was really cool experience, and something that I, remember vividly.
Yeah.
So I played basketball as a kid in high school, and played baseball, and worked with some of the top baseball players. Miguel Cabrera, triple crown winner. Been to their locker rooms, spent a few days there, and so that was pretty cool as well.
Yeah. As a Patriots fan, still a little bit salty about that Super Bowl, but
Yes, yes.
dang Eli Manning. Um,
Right.
so how was it meeting Lawrence Taylor? I'm guessing it was a surreal moment for you.
Yeah, he's a fun guy, and you know he it was great.
Right. So, one last question before we end off this amazing session, by the way. Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, it's been a great experience with you telling your stories and all. And I think we learned a lot, both of us. And I think the viewers will be really happy about this one. So, last question. I just wanted to ask, like, what hobbies did you have as a kid and right now as a professional, like outside when you go home after getting back from whatever your office space is? Where do you go home and what do? You maybe you watch this Giants game, maybe you do gardening. I mean, what's your hobbies?
Well, I box once or twice a week, and when I say box, I pay somebody to hit. They don't hit me, but it's a great exercise. And I play tennis once or twice a week. So I try to stay active somewhat. When I come home, I have a 15-year-old daughter, Olivia, and a 12-year-old son, Jackson. And so when they allow me to spend time with them, I try to spend time with them, my wife, Lindsay. And so, we try to spend quality time as a family. And, usually I'm driving them around, and I'm doing, whatever they're doing. Sometimes we're on the boat, we like to go out on the boat as a family. And so those are kind of what I'm enjoying now in my life.
Well, before we wrap this up, we want to say thank you for joining us. It was an amazing experience being able to talk to you and learn from you. And we hope you can come back on the podcast someday, maybe share a little bit
Sure.
more stories.
Great. Yeah. Thank you for having me. And it was a lot of fun. I appreciate it.